Here on page 776, we have 13.11 and we have the idea of private member functions. You'll remember when we first started defining the class that we had public and we had private members for our functions. So those members could either be functions or they could be variables. And to date, everything that we have done when it comes to the functions of our classes has been public. This is the other side of that coin. Now we have private member functions. And really what that does is it it kind of allows us to have sort of a firewall between what sorts of functions we want to be able to call and what sorts of functions we want to be able to restrict the calling of. So a private member function cannot be called by code from outside the class. So as we have our class, the header file, and we have the .cpp for our class, it cannot be called from outside of that. So that means we would need to be able to call it from, for example, and here in the example we have on 776, the private functions are being called at the time that the constructor is being called. So this way, we cannot call our two private functions initialize name and the other one initialize init phone. So this is on lines 21 and 15, it appears, here on 777. So what that enables us to do is say, you cannot call these two functions, those functions being init name and init phone. You cannot call those at any other time aside from the constructor. And what this allows us to do is it allows us to hide this implementation from other classes. It allows us to hide this implementation from other sections of our runtime environment where perhaps we don't want, and the use case for this is going to vary pretty greatly from project to project, but let's say that we do not want here inside of Rock Valley College, for instance, we would never want an instructor to create a new student. So the instructor class would be far, far separated from if this was the student class. And what that does is it helps us encapsulate the kinds of data that we can see. It helps us encapsulate the kinds of functions, the modifiers, the assessors, the setters and the getters that we have, so that we can separate that functionality out and really restrict who and what it is that has access to not just the variable data here inside of our class, but also the functions as members of a class.